I'm going to lower the tone with some prose, and this is called the Palace Museum. My favourite room in the British Museum is the one with the Assyrian frieze of a lion hunt. If you enter on the left-hand side, you see armed soldiers first, and between them and brave King Ashburnipal in a chariot, several fearsome lions that have been speared or shot with arrows. And only finally do you see a lion about to be released from a cage. If you enter on the right, the story starts with the caged lion. So, travelling clockwise, it is a wild hunt or even a battle. Travelling anti-clockwise, it is sport. I once overheard a British Museum guide being tested on her spiel, beginning with the story of how the 2,000-year-old reliefs were found in Nineveh in the 19th century and brought back to London before the French could get their hands on them. When she had finished narrating the scene, the trainee, clearly annoyed at having to listen to the more senior but younger guide, was advised that her way, from right to left, was not how the institution recommended it should be done. The proper way to read the piece was in the opposite direction. 100 years after the lion hunt was relocated during what we now call the First Gulf War, hundreds of Kurdish families took shelter in an unfinished presidential palace on the opposite bank of the river from Nineveh in what is now northern Iraq. An article from the Daily News vividly describes fires burning on polished marble floors. Before the invasion of 2003, UN inspectors were refused entry to the estimated 80 or so palaces that Saddam Hussein continued to have built under Western sanctions. It was suspected that among their many rooms were laboratories for creating lethal germs and secret stashes of weapons of mass destruction. After the invasion, many of the palaces became living quarters for US soldiers. They did not have to clear away weapons laboratories, although in one palace they did empty a bunker filled with gold bars, which turned out to be blocks of painted lead. In a series of photographs taken by a young Irish photographer, Richard Moss, you can see, in his words, vast self-indulgent halls of columned marble and extravagant chandeliers, which suddenly look more like college dormitories. Weight sets, flags, partition walls, sofas, basketball hoops, and even posters of bikinied women have been imported to fill Saddam's spatial residuum. The effect is oddly decorative, as if someone has simply moved in for a long weekend, unpacking an assortment of mundane possessions. One of the mundane possessions I unpacked when I moved from London to study in Texas was a postcard of one of Moss's photographs, which I framed and stuck to my wall with blue tack. It was of troops in combat gear around a dry swimming pool. Visitors would often put their noses up to the image to get a closer look. After a while, I forgot where exactly the troops were, and not long after that, even which conflict they were fighting in. I'd say that I thought it was Iraq, but it could have been Afghanistan maybe. And so we wouldn't talk too much about war, but instead about the stunning cracked blue of the dry pool and the soldiers' deep combat green. In 2008, the British Museum started work on the Basra Museum project. With Iraqi help and advice, its site reads, a former palace of Saddam Hussein has been identified as a suitable building for a new museum. The lakeside palace would provide at least 4 good-sized exhibition galleries in an attractive location, and would contain modern and ethnographic material from the Basra area, as well as antiquities which would in due course be returned from Baghdad. The museum has still not opened, but at some point in the near future it is hoped that the money will be raised, the area secured, the artifacts arranged, and the guides trained in the proper way to tell the story of the place. Thank you.